Hello, and welcome to Christ in Culture. My name's Noah,
And I'm Wes.
and today we're going to talk about something pretty important. In fact, something that is completely ordained by God Himself, and
That's
that
pretty
is
important.
that is very important. And the thing we're talking about today is elders. Now, with elders, they have a very specific purpose, do they not?
They really do.
What's a couple of those things?
Well, whenever you look down at the actual purpose of an elder is an individual who is qualified by God, according to 1 Timothy 3 and also Titus 1, who meets all those qualifications that are examples to the flock, 1 Peter chapter 5.
Mm-hmm.
And their main goal is to look out for the souls of not only themselves, but also for the whole flock.
So they're charged with something pretty important there.
That's absolutely true.
So for elders, it's I mean, from what you said and from what you quoted, it sounds like if we mess up under their leadership, it's going to be on them in the end.
Exactly. I mean, it's going to be one of those things like Hebrews 13, verse 17, where it says there that we need to be submissive to those who are over us,
Mm-hmm.
because in the end, they are going to give an account for our souls. And it's one of those things that um, elders just really need to, you know, really see the importance of their role here.
Mm-hmm.
That on the day of judgment, they're going to have to give an account for every person that was ever under them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something they can't do in a sly type way or an easy little, well, let's just let things go. You can't have that type of mentality. It's something that you're dealing with, that you're going to have to deal with even on the day of judgment.
They can't be just like a boardroom
No, it
that meets
cannot.
once a quarter or
Exactly.
twice
It's
a year
not,
or whatever.
elderships are not just about what takes place in their meetings. It's what they do on a daily basis with each and every individual that's under their rule.
Mm-hmm. So we know a little bit about the elderships. We know some of their qualifications, like you have to be apt to teach. So you have to be someone that is willing to teach, and you can read that in 1 Timothy chapter 3. Um, I believe both the examples given, 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, say that both must be good stewards. 1 Timothy 3 says, "Roll over his household well, be in charge of his children." I mean, it even goes as far as for elder qualifications about his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty important thing that we have here. But one thing I want to talk today is kind of like the degradation that we have today about the eldership.
Yeah.
So like what it has become in today's really Christendom world.
I think it'd be important to go ahead and define what we mean by Christendom.
Yeah. So we have the church that Christ built, the church of Christ. Read that in Romans 16, verse 16. We see it established on the day of Pentecost. And then we have
2.
in Acts
Yep.
chapter 2. Then we have deviation from that, really starting in the 4th century with the Catholic Church, and then even further when the Reformation movement came along, and all these different people, they come up with their own denominations and everything. Encompassing, when you talk about Christianity, we are talking about the church that Christ founded,
Yes.
the church. But when we talk about Christendom,
We're
which,
talking about everybody who believes in Christ.
yes, it's not people that are necessarily Christians.
That's right.
It's not people necessarily Christians. It is everybody who believes in the person, in the deity of God, of Jesus Christ, that He walked this earth for 33 years. He died for us. That is what we're talking about when we say Christendom. It is everybody that believes in God and believes in Christ.
So basically, you're dealing with like Catholicism. You're also dealing with all the major mainline denominations.
Yeah, you got Baptist,
And-
Methodist, Lutheran.
And then you've even are concluding even with all these new community churches as well, because if they preach the belief in Christ, they are inclusive in this whole Christendom thought.
And even though people don't want to include them, you can even say even Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, even though a lot of people don't want to include them because of their stance on Christ's deity, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Those are all included in Christendom. But the degradation of the eldership, this is something that has even crept its way into the church. One of the things that we see most common in the church is boardroom elders. Mm-hmm. They're a group of high up people, people that have influence, that people that might have money, people that have a really good social status, either in the community or in the church, or someone that has like I said, with money, donated a lot of money. They helped build the new fellowship hall. They helped put a roof on the building, things like that. And it's turned into a group of people that just meet together and they make decisions, and that's all they do.
I would even go to the extent of these are individuals that would basically just make decisions for the congregation in their meetings, right? Never having discussed anything with the members underneath them.
Oh, no.
I mean, you would even include that into boardroom elders as well.
Yeah, because, I mean, when you talk about CEOs, CFOs, and all that, they're not going to bring in, Johnny that's an entry-level mailroom worker. They're not going to bring him up into the boardroom to talk.
And you know what? I think it's very interesting to note out right here that whenever you're talking about like boardroom elders and things like that, you're also talking about something that the Bible defines as a lord. Mm-hmm. And remember there in 1 Peter chapter 5, he says, not as lords ruling over the flocks, right? Because we need to be an example to the flock. Yeah. We need they need to be individuals
don't need
that
to be telling them what to do, but show them what to do.
Being a leader. I mean,
there's a difference between a boss and a leader.
Oh, absolutely. And think about it this way. Back in the Renaissance areas, all right? So you're talking about individuals that have captains that go out into war and things like that. Whenever you're talking about wars in and of themselves, where do the captains need to be? Not in the boardroom. Mm-mm. No, they're right there in the mix of the people, and that's exactly
usually on the front line.
They're on the front line. They're the ones that's actually telling them, "Let's charge, let's do things, let's fight." And you're actually going to be seeing them right there in front of the people, leading the way. There's a reason why they're called leaders, right? Not tellers, not lords, but leaders.
One of the descriptions that we use for elders is also called a shepherd. So a shepherd that's in charge of the flock. I mean, do they just sit in their house all day?
Absolutely not. They're among the flock.
They're among the flock.
They protect them. They defend them. They do everything. Yeah.
They carry a big stick too to protect the flock. I mean, they're in charge of a group of people, and they've literally been charged with their souls, like we talked about just a second ago. And now we're getting to a little bit of Christendom here. Another thing that we see that is degrading of the eldership is unqualified pastors. Let's go ahead and define pastors real quick. In Christendom, in pretty much every single denomination, the preachers and ministers of the congregations are referred to as pastors. They are given a title, whether they are qualified or not for it. Take this for example. You go to your local Baptist church's website, and you'll find a picture of a man standing there, and he probably will not be married, probably been what they define as a Christian for a short amount of time, and he has the term lead pastor, senior pastor, some kind of pastor next to their name. One of my roommates in college is a worship pastor. He's not married. By definition, by actual biblical definition, he is not a Christian. but he holds the title pastor. He's unqualified to be called a pastor, but he holds that title.
Mormons even call themselves pastors.
Mm-hmm. Even the Catholic Church, even though the priests go by father and whatnot, they even put in their descriptions of themselves that they pastor their local church. And it's kind of degrading. It's kind of putting down this kind of, well, not kind of, but this really important position in the church.
Absolutely.
It's made it where it's almost worthless.
I mean, if you were to go back, let's just say back to the establishment of the Catholic Church, right? It all stemmed from what was actually prophesied there in Acts chapter 20, beginning of verse number 29. Now this is Paul and Miletus talking to the Ephesian elders, right? And he says, "For I know this, that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you." You, talking about the elders. Now watch what happens. "Not sparing the flock, also from among yourselves men will rise up, speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after themselves." So Paul knew what was about to happen. And he says that this departure was actually going to be taking place beginning in the elderships. Now, I think it's very important to emphasize here that if you look back into history, which we're about to be talking about history as well.
Oh, yeah.
That history actually shows that the beginning stages of the Catholic Church actually started within the eldership itself. These are people who were wanting to draw away people. They were trying to, like you had a bunch of different elders that all of a sudden wanted to start bringing about bishops that were now no longer just over the autonomy of a congregation, but now over groups.
Well, it sounds like it's a lot of influence of politics being involved here.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And I think it's also important for us to emphasize the same thing, that as you start studying through this, now they started saying, okay, now there are bishops that are now over particular congregations, a multiplicity of them, no longer just a single congregation, right? So the departure already started, right?
Yeah.
The unqualifying already started. And then it just led on to a little bit further. And then the main big bishop that was going to be over all of it, they call the Pope now. So, I mean, you start seeing how the unqualifying started happening. And so I've got to ask you a question, Noah. If you're willing to depart from any of those qualifications, how far are you willing to go?
Willing to go pretty far.
I mean, your mind's already set, right?
Yeah, your mind's already set. It's already made up. It's like, I'm not going to do what God tells me, so I'm just going to do what I want.
There you go. There's a reason why God gave those qualifications. And he knows what he wants. He knows what he desires, and he's very clear on what he wants and what he desires. And there's a reason why he says, even in 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, these individuals must be. So you're not saying a suggestive type thought.
It's not these elders need to be but don't have to be.
No, if you use the word must, what does that word must mean?
Must, you have to be.
It's an obligation.
It's an obligation. You have no choice whether or not you can be these or not.
So then let me ask you this. Can everybody be an elder?
No.
No.
I mean, it
it's
excludes half the population by one of the first things, husband of one wife.
There you go. So, I mean, you think about that for a second. Just because you may not be qualified in order to be an elder, according to those qualifications, doesn't make it a degrading thing. God had a place and a reason for those individuals to be qualified in that particular area to be the leaders of the congregation. Just because you may not be able to, I actually was told by an individual before, well, if I can't be an elder, then what's the whole point of being a Christian? I was like, buddy, you're missing it.
That's missing the whole point.
You're missing a whole lot of it, right? And
not everybody is going to be qualified to be an elder.
Exactly.
But everybody can be qualified to be a Christian.
Exactly. But there's a reason why God gave specific qualifications, because, I mean, there's even qualifications for preachers. There's qualifications for deacons.
Mm-hmm.
There's qualifications for elders.
It's qualifications
their
for
wives.
the normal lay member in the church.
There are qualifications on being just a member of the church.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are rules and regulations that we have to live by. So, I mean, it's either you're doing what you were supposed to be doing, or you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want to take a moment here, and I want us to look every time elders are mentioned. It's always in multiplicity.
Mm-hmm.
In Titus, Titus is told that he needs to go and set up elders. Mm-hmm. When, like you said earlier, they were talking to the Ephesian elders. Mm-hmm. You never read of one elder ruling a congregation. Mm-mm. You always see a multiplicity of elders, more than one. And one thing that we see today in Christendom, and something that is unfortunately creeping its way into the church, is what is referred to as the one pastor system. Mm-hmm. Again, keep in mind the definition that we used earlier of pastor. And now put it in that sentence, the one pastor system. You have a man that is the preacher, the minister of a congregation, that acts as the elder for the congregation.
And that can actually be even like the preacher can see his role as something that it's not.
Exactly.
You can actually see, even in elderships, if not careful, mm-hmm. there may be this one main elder and the rest are followers. Mm-hmm. And that is as deadly to a congregation as anything.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so important that every elder, every single one of them, understands that they don't have any rule over anybody else than any other elder. Mm-mm. In all reality, they can't make decisions on their own either.
No.
Because again, you're not the only shepherd of that congregation. You don't make the decision for that congregation. Mm-mm. It's a group of elders that make that qualification. So, I mean, it's something that needs to be very well laid out.
Oh yeah, it is very well laid out in Scripture. But if the elders don't understand that, then, or the people that call themselves elders don't understand that, then that's an issue. A friend of mine once told me that anytime he talks with the congregation, they always ask them if there's an issue that arises. There's something that I have to make a super quick decision on. And whatever, chain of action that you have, like for me, I'm a youth minister. If there's a deacon over youth and I can't get in touch with him, and there's an elder that has been put over youth, like overseeing that ministry specifically, if I can't get in touch with them, do you trust each other enough that I can go to any one of you and they can make a decision right there? Mm-hmm. And if they're sitting around waiting for a specific person to answer, then it's probably best to avoid that situation, because they probably have a lead elder. Mm-hmm. But that specifically is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the one pastor system today. While we know a one elder issue is an issue, talking about the one pastor system and talking about preachers acting as elders, even going as far as holding the title pastor. But before we look at this thing that is creeping into the church today, let's look at a little bit of history about this. Kind of starts with a time when people couldn't really read and write. Mm-hmm. Get this. The Catholic Church was founded. Things were being translated into Latin. And then you get to a point where education isn't as well sought after as it was. You think about places like Rome and Athens, all these places that were, bound full of knowledge and, educated people. Well, then you get, 7, 8, 900, 1,000 years later, not as many people are as educated in the common folk, I should say. So when people can't read and write, who tells them what things say?
They had to go to the religious leaders to tell them what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You send them to the religious leaders who have been pretty much indoctrinated since they were little. Um, they're sent, monks. They devote themselves to learning Latin. They speak in Latin in their in the services and things like that. So yet the common people had to rely on other folks to tell them what the Bible said. I mean, it originally pretty much was in the common language, which was Greek when the Bible was written. When the New Testament was written, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and Aramaic, which would have been, the common language of them at that time. And the New Testament, written in Greek. We had the Septuagint, which is the Old Testament written into Greek. So everybody could pretty much read it. And, if you could read, you could read it.
and the unique thing was that in the first century they had what is known as Kenny Greek, which was basically a common Greek that everybody at that particular time actually knew, that on top of their natural language.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was something that was a very beautiful time for communication, because it's very, very well known, and everybody could understand everything that was being said.
Mm-hmm. It's like going today. You go to a Spanish-speaking country, and if you have someone that like grew up in America, speaks English, and they eventually learn Spanish, they might start speaking, what's known as Spanglish.
Spanglish.
Yeah. Or they even, depending on where they learn, they'll even learn the dialect of that local area. A friend of mine, he preaches up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He taught himself Spanish, but he taught himself from the specific dialect that's from Honduras.
Mm-hmm.
So he said he went to, I believe he said Mexico one time, and they couldn't quite understand what he was saying because he was using Honduran mannerisms, Honduran idioms, their figures of speech, things that wouldn't quite understand in Mexico. Like if we go over to like England, they've got their mannerisms, they've got their figures of speech that they use that we don't quite understand. But what we have here with people that couldn't read and write, they literally could not understand Latin. It wasn't just like a miscommunication of dialects. It was a straight up, I have no idea what you're saying. Yeah, I am completely uneducated in this language, and I will probably never learn it.
Yep. And especially under Roman rule.
Oh yeah, especially under Roman rule.
They were individuals that were very ruthless whenever it came to the education of individuals. They actually had in their own minds that the more uneducated the people are, the easier they are to rule, because they're going to be more dependent upon the government to tell them what they need to do.
You got to wait for someone else to tell you.
Exactly.
But and then I think the worst part of it, even if you can't understand it, if you got it in your hands, you can at least try and learn it.
Mm-hmm.
But the think with that is that printing wasn't really a thing.
No.
You had to pay someone to write it by hand. Think about it. We've got like I don't remember what the number is, like over 4,000 manuscripts of the Bible, the different books and everything, and the different letters. All of those were handwritten.
Yeah, we actually have a whole lot more than that now. Yeah, whenever they were first done, you think about, I think the King James Version being translated in 1611. I think there was...
I think it was around 2,000 at that time.
About 2,500 manuscripts, I think, is what was around. And now, like the New King James, as well as the ESV and things like that now, are based upon like 50,000 manuscripts. And so it's just awesome how much more we have
yeah.
in our discoveries.
And think about this. All of those were handwritten. Today we have printers, we have copiers, we got scanners. They didn't have that. They had to pay someone to handwrite this. And it cost a lot of money
That's what you
to
would
have
read
someone
about
write
scribes.
it. Yeah, scribes. That's what a scribe
That's
was.
what a scribe was.
Someone that literally wrote things. If you wanted something like nicely addressed or something copied so that you can have it for your own studies, if you wanted a copy of a book, you had to pay someone a lot of money to hand write that book for you. But talking about this historically, we have several things that address these issues over time, didn't we? Like Martin Luther. At this time, the printing press wasn't invented, but Martin Luther he nailed his 95 Theses on the doors of the Wittenberg Church. And afterwards, after he was excommunicated by the Catholic Church, he translated the Bible from Latin into the vernacular, the common language, which for him would have been German. He translated it into a language that people could understand. So it gave people, even if they couldn't read, if they knew someone that could read, they could at least have a chance to learn it.
And then, even after that, you have like Gutenberg, who was one of the first mass-produced the Bible. You have John
Gutenberg
Wycliffe.
Press and the Gutenberg Bible.
John Wycliffe was actually executed for doing what he was doing to produce the Bible out to everybody. You think about, when the Roman government had in their own minds that if you were going to be under the Roman rule, you're going to be Roman Catholic, right? They had a lot of big ruling aspects whenever they were thinking about themselves as the oldest church, but they were the oldest break-off of the church. But whenever you think about it from that perspective, how sad it is that whenever the word started being mass produced to the communities, I want you to think about that. They started excommunicating people.
Excommunicating.
They were executing individuals.
Crying out heretic.
Heretic. They had to go through a lot to have just a Bible within their own hands.
Oh, yeah.
Just think about this. The Roman Catholics actually got to the point of where they had the Bible in Latin chained to their pulpit. Okay?
That way nobody could come and take it.
And then they would have a flock of people standing in a line that could only stand there for 5 minutes. I think it was 5 minutes. And after the 5-minute mark was done, they were pushed away. They couldn't have it any longer. Why not?
They wanted to keep the power to themselves.
They wanted to keep the power to themselves. Now, going back to this, what we're talking about today, about the whole pastor thing, if you're not doing the work of the pastor, the eldership, right? Then what's the main reason why you're there? Let's ask that question. Are you wanting authority? Are you wanting power? Because, it's either you're there to do the work or you're not. Why are we there? And that's why it's so very, very important for us to evaluate ourselves on that.
Continuing with addressing the issue, education became more of a standard. As education became more widespread, you got the Renaissance movement, which cool thing was brought about by Christendom, brought about people that claimed Christianity and everything. And then I want to talk about today. Have you ever thought about how many translations we have? I looked it up right before we did this.
How many's out there?
Quite a good bit. So get this. For just the English language, there are 450 translations. For just the English language. The entire Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, has been translated into 704 languages. And then for the New Testament, an additional 1,500 languages.
No wonder it's known as the #1 best-selling book.
It is the number one
Every
best selling.
single year.
It is the number one best selling and the number one most stolen book in the world every single year.
Wow. I mean that's pretty surreal if you ask me, because I mean you think, does anybody have any excuse now to not have a Bible?
No.
And the fact is, if you're listening to this and you need a Bible, let us know. We'll get it to you.
Mm-hmm.
All right? We'll get you one. The fact of the matter is, we are in the business of your souls because we want your soul to go to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we're doing this. That's why we have a podcast. And we don't want you to just take our word for it. We want you to actually check us out. And so how are you going to check us out? Pick out your own Bible. If you don't have one, we'll get you one.
Mm-hmm.
And we want you to read it for yourself.
So then, what causes our one pastor system today? What has led a deviation from even 500 years ago, when we see a reestablishment of elders? We see a reestablishment of elders for at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
In places like the Lutheran Church, Presbyterian Church, and even the Baptist Church, we have a reestablishment of elders.
Mm-hmm.
So then what then causes the one pastor system today? And one thing that I have here is neglect from elders.
Mm-hmm. You go back to Acts chapter 20, and that's exactly what it stemmed from.
Yeah.
Because whenever he said there in verse number 28, take heed to yourselves and to the flock.
Mm-hmm.
If you stop taking that evaluation of yourself, and if you don't make the changes that you need to make yourself, once you forget that, what can happen from there?
Pretty much anything.
Anything. And so that's where it all became from. The neglect of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
reevaluating themselves. Why are they elders? What's their purpose? Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the rest of it, 29 and 30, really gets into the main neglect.
Mm-hmm. And I've got a little side note under it. I said something members have let happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, like you said just a second ago, we have no excuse today. We have it in our own language. We can read it. We can write it out. We have it on our phones now. We literally walk everywhere with it. If you're a Christian and you have the Bible on your phone, we walk everywhere with it.
But I think it really comes down to this, that people want to be told
Mm-hmm.
rather than study for themselves.
Oh yeah.
And when you're wanting to be told something and not really put in the hard work effort to study it for yourself and things like that, you're going to get yourself into a whole lot of heap of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing.
They come up with the excuse of, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't know it. I'll never know it. I'm not smart enough to know it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Christendom has, and even now the church has made an issue, and they haven't addressed it.
But we don't make those type of excuses whenever it comes to things that we like.
Oh, no.
I mean, if you're really motivated into wanting to do something, whether it be in a hobby or
Mm-hmm.
whether it be in something that you enjoy doing, oh man, you'll find a way of learning how to do it.
Oh yeah,
But the real
people know everything
soul-
about vehicles. People know everything about their
Exactly.
favorite sports team.
Exactly. People want to make excuses for the things that they really don't care about.
Mm-mm. Here's the funny thing: the Bible's written on some versions are written on. I think like the ESV is on a 6th grade level.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say like the NIV, the non-inspired version,
Yes.
is is written on a 3rd grade level.
Yeah.
You mean to tell me, you who has an engineering degree that has worked on nuclear submarines is not smart enough to read at a 6th grade level?
Yeah. Yeah.
That-
it really comes down to really what is your real desire as a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be what God wants you to be, or do you want to be the least you have to be to try to excuse yourself from all the other things?
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is, on the day of judgment, we're not going to be having excuses. The excuses are not going to stand.
Nope. This has led to the I'll do it myself attitude of preachers.
Mm-hmm.
And that stems from the elders' neglect. They see preachers pushing themselves, killing themselves, to come up with all the ideas, to teach all the classes, to do all the ministering, do all the Bible studies with people in the community, because the members say I can't, and the elders don't really care because they're a boardroom.
But I want to take that a step further, okay? Having the preachers actually saying, you know what, I'll just do it myself type mentality is one thing. But when congregations hire preachers and they say that's what we pay you for,
that's the preacher's job.
That's the same thing.
Oh yeah, that's the
exact
preacher's
same
job.
thing. And I've been part of congregations where the men have actually said that before. That's what we pay you for, even though the rest of them won't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever the congregation's not growing, guess who they blame?
Blame the preacher.
You.
You're not preaching good enough.
You're not preaching good enough. You're not going out here enough, and all this other stuff. As if it's just the preacher's responsibility to do the whole work of a whole congregation.
But it's not.
And it's not. It's not at all. And it's and where does that mentality come from? They're not reading their Bibles, and they're being influenced by the society and Christendom into letting them think that one man can do it all.
Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, he preaches here in Alabama. The last congregation he worked at, it wasn't like we were just talking about, we pay you to do that, but it was a I'm doing it because no one else is type of situation. Mm-hmm. And he said if he hadn't left when he did, he wouldn't be preaching right now. Mm-hmm. Because he was about to burn out. Mm-hmm. This one pastor system leads to burnout. Mm-hmm. It leads to people falling away from the church. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, we're not growing. Well, that's the preacher's fault. Mm-hmm. We're, he's in his office all day and not reaching anybody, and that's why we're not growing. It's the preacher's fault. Mm-hmm. And as if the preacher is the only person educated in the Bible. Mm-hmm. This is where it's kind of where academia comes in. Mm-hmm.
Whenever I was out seeking for a congregation, and I know that you were even out, putting your applications in before you were hired on here. It's sad to see the academia situation that's within the church, mm-hmm. because people actually have like these qualifications of things that they are looking for, and I've even gotten it down to where some congregations said that you cannot be the preacher here unless you have a master's degree in theology. Mm-hmm. You can't be a preacher here unless you have a bachelor's degree in theology. And I want you to really think about that. If you're going to say that a person cannot be a preacher of your congregation due to the fact that they don't have the academia or the piece of paper hanging up in their office, mm-hmm. that they're not qualified to be your preacher, I want you to think about this.
What does that say about your elders?
Well, that says a lot about your elders, but at the same time, think about this. You wouldn't even let Paul be a minister there at your congregation. Peter, who was a fisherman, by the way. And then you think about Jesus himself. Did he have a diploma?
He was a carpenter.
He was a carpenter. I mean, in all reality,
he would have been the definition of dumb.
Yeah. And I want you to think about this. Are we putting more of an emphasis on the education aspect, or are they scripturally preaching the truth of God's word? Mm-hmm. Because if they're doing that, I don't care if they've got a degree or not. If they are scripturally preaching the truth, that person is solid in the sight of God.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, when I was applying at different congregations, and I want to let the audience know this, I don't have a Bible degree. I have a degree in music education. So I'm just about on the opposite end of what you would consider a minister, education-wise. But the farthest I got in an interview process was with a fairly large congregation out in Houston, Texas. And the only reason I got as far as I did is because they didn't look at my resume, but they looked at it. They looked at how I answered questions that they asked me. They tested me. They tested my knowledge. They didn't look and see, well, this guy doesn't have a Bible degree, let's throw his away. And like, what does this verse say? What does it mean? What do you think it means? How does the Bible define this situation?
I want to put a little personal note in there. I'm glad they didn't hire you.
To be honest, I'm kind of glad too, because my two best friends lived there, and then like 3 months later, they moved. They moved to Dallas on the other side of Texas.
The providence of God is beautiful.
I know, right? I would have moved there and was like, yeah, I'm here with my best friends. Why are you leaving?
Why are you leaving? No, but I am very thankful to have you on here to work with you. It's just awesome.
But most of my interactions with congregations has been negative in the sense of two things. One, I'm not married, which we will get into hopefully in the next couple of weeks when you come back from vacation, hoping to start that series.
Okay.
And two, because I don't have a Bible degree. It's always we want someone educated and we want someone married. That's all a congregation looks for now. They want someone that has spent the thousands of dollars on a piece of paper. Look, I've already spent thousands of dollars on one piece of paper. I'm not going to go spend thousands of dollars on another piece of paper. And I tell you, some of my favorite preachers are uneducated. They have the best examples. They have the most real life knowledge. Honestly, I would rather have a preacher that has real life knowledge than someone who goes straight out of high school to a Christian school, gets taught what to say, comes out and doesn't know how to reach people.
And at the same time, think about this. A lot of times with those degrees, the education makes the person, not the person the education. And so with that being the case, there's a lot of people that are out here that are trying to flaunt their degrees and stuff, but they are the most unscriptural individuals I've ever heard of.
And think about Clifford. He told me that the reason he got his doctorate is because this Baptist preacher would not talk to him unless he had a doctorate. Unless he had a specific degree, he would not talk to him about anything biblical. Nothing. I mean, that speaks volumes to me. The fact that you would discount someone's education. I mean, when it comes to past a bachelor's degree, bachelor's is where you learn knowledge. Master's and on, that's all application. Has nothing to do with knowledge. You're doing your own research. You're doing your own application. You're teaching yourself. So the fact that our churches are requiring people to have certain degrees is kind of distasteful, and also it degrades our own members to the point of, if you don't have this degree, you will never be knowledgeable enough. You will never have the qualifications enough to be our minister. So how do we fix this?
Well, you're going to have to, first of all, get elders to evaluate their real work, evaluate who they are and why they are in that position. Ask themselves, am I here for the right reason, for the right purpose? If not, get out. You're doing the church an injustice. If you don't evaluate the work and actually saying that I'm going to be here looking after the souls of individuals, nothing more, nothing less, and I'm going to do whatever it takes on my end to make sure that you're going to get to heaven, right? If it's for any other reason, get out.
If you want influence or status or power,
Exactly.
or even just want the title, just to say
you're
I'm an
doing
elder.
injustice.
Doing an injustice.
You're not there for the right reason. You're not there for the scriptural reason.
You're there for selfish gain.
Exactly.
You don't need to be in that position because you're already not in a mindset to be in that position.
One thing I love about being here is I've actually been told by the elders, let us do our part and you do yours. We hired you to preach and to teach. Let us do the ruling. And I love that because every congregation I've ever been a part of previous to here, I had to be looked at as basically the elder because they all looked to me and there weren't elders and therefore they looked to me for guidance and all this other stuff. And I hated that. But to finally be with a congregation where the elders say, we are the elders and you're the preacher, don't worry about some things. There's even things that now they discuss outside of me being there. Because if it's something that's pertinent that they think I need to know about, they'll tell me. But it's not my place to be in all the business of the church. That's
frankly,
their job.
I don't even want to know all the business of the church.
That's a headache in and of itself.
No, I'm glad they let us go at 9 o'clock.
Exactly.
That way they can continue on for another 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. But when elders understand their position, that's the beginning step of having a scriptural congregation. Because it's actually been said that you cannot supersede the strength or the ability of your leaders. And that is a scriptural true statement with that. A congregation can never rise above its leadership.
Nope.
So with that being
Sure
the case, if we want the congregation to rise, what's going to happen to begin with?
The leaders are going to have to rise.
That's right.
The elders are going to have to rise.
That's right. That's one of the very first things of fixing this whole problem.
When it comes to the eldership and them being in charge of the congregation, they have to tell the members to step up too. Like we've talked about, they're in charge of each congregation. You know, what does Hebrews 13:17 say again? Let me find it.
To be submissive to those who are over you.
Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. And then the last part of this verse is where it's really, really speaking about what they're getting out of this. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. If the elders are constantly having to worry over our souls because we've grown stagnant, like the church at Laodicea, if we've grown stagnant, which is a very real possibility, if we are letting ourselves get past that or get to that point, our elders are not in joy. I mean, is being an elder always going to be a fun thing? No. Is being a Christian always going to be a fun thing? No. But it should bring us joy.
Absolutely.
And if our elders are being drugged down by our members, then elders need to reevaluate, but so do the members.
That's right.
The members need to reevaluate because we need to be submitting to our elders.
We can either be a burden or a help to our elders.
And if we are being a burden to our elders, we're in sin.
That's right.
We are causing an issue. And this brings us to the last thing. How do we fix this? If you are a preacher, if you are a minister, and you are in a situation where you're doing everything, if you are literally doing all the teaching, if elders are looking to you for every single guidance that they have, if they have told you from the get-go, you do everything for us, I'm going to say this as gently and as lovingly as I can. Get out. because it might cost you your soul.
Get out or back off.
Get out or back off.
Yep.
Either reevaluate your stance as the minister at that congregation, or find another congregation that does not make you a pastor. Because if that's all you're going to be treated as, you're going to burn out, and you might lose your soul over that.
If you burn out, think about it this way. If you burn out, your heart's not in it anymore. Every message that you preach, every teaching opportunity that you teach in a Bible class, you have to change the reason why you're doing it. And if your purpose as a preacher is nothing more than to care for the souls of mankind, to help them get to heaven, if you ever change it to I'm doing it for a paycheck. If I'm doing it to fill my time, I do it because it's, in some cases, the easiest job. All right?
There are people that go into ministry because it's easy.
Yeah, if you're not busy, it's easy.
Yeah, quote unquote easy.
Yes. If you ever change the purpose of why you're doing it, love yourself, love your soul, and love the Lord enough to say it's time for me to get out. And members, understand sometimes you can push a minister to do that. So think about that. Elders need to reevaluate, step up. The preachers need to back off and let the elders do their job and push them to do their job. And members need to step up in supporting their ministers, supporting their elders, and stop being a burden and be a help. That's my advice.
Most definitely. To those of you that are thinking of becoming ministers, always evaluate everything that you're doing. Evaluate your stance with the congregation and everything. To those that are wanting to be elders, evaluate why you want to be an elder, because it will cost a lot more than your soul if anything happens. Thank you for listening today. This has been Christ in Culture. We hope you have a wonderful day. God bless.